The chamber was cold. It was always cold in the Galactic Council building because most of the species who ruled the galaxy preferred low temperatures. Deho stood in the corner, wearing his formal Earth uniform, watching the proceedings with careful eyes. He was the only human allowed inside this room, and even then, he could only watch. He could not speak. He could not vote. He was nothing more than a guest in a house that had never wanted him. The chamber was enormous. 12 raised platforms circled the central dais, each one holding the representatives of the galaxy's ruling species. The Velithians sat highest, their crystalline bodies catching the blue light from above. They had ruled this council for 3,000 years, and they made sure everyone remembered it. Below them sat the Morvathi, the Alindri, the Kasori, and 8 other species whose names humans had only learned 40 years ago. 40 years. That was how long humanity had been part of galactic civilization. 40 years of being told to wait. 40 years of being called a young species and a probationary member. 40 years of watching their complaints disappear into bureaucratic silence. Today, that silence would cost a man his life. The holographic display above the central dais flickered to life, and a face appeared. Michael Turner, human, age 52. Former military officer turned freighter captain. The charges listed below his image were simple: destruction of a Velithian diplomatic vessel, murder of 47 Velithian crew members, and violation of Council peace statutes. Deho knew Turner. Not personally, but by reputation. Every human in Council space knew the name. Turner had spent 30 years flying the outer routes, the dangerous paths between human colonies that no other species would service. He had saved thousands of lives during the Drift Plague outbreak by running medicine through quarantine zones. He was not a murderer. He was not a criminal, but the Council had already made its decision. The Velithian High Speaker rose from her platform. Her body was made of living crystal, purple and blue, and when she moved, she made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Her voice filled the chamber through translation devices embedded in every seat. "The evidence is clear," she said. The human Michael Turner attacked and destroyed the diplomatic vessel Serenity's Light without provocation. 47 of our citizens died in the vacuum of space. This crime cannot go unpunished. Deho wanted to scream. He wanted to tell them that the diplomatic vessel had been operating in restricted space. He wanted to tell them about the distress calls from human colonies that had gone unanswered, about the families who had reported missing loved ones for years. But his voice was locked by protocol dampeners, and even if he could speak, they would not listen. They never listened. Kang Sumi stood on the observation level above. Deho, she was Earth's diplomatic liaison. A woman who had spent 20 years trying to make the Council see humans as equals. She watched the vote happen with tears in her eyes. 12 platforms. 12 votes. The lights turned red one by one, each one a confirmation of death. Unanimous. The death warrant was approved. The document materialized in the air, glowing gold with official Council seals. Michael Turner would be executed in 72 hours. There would be no appeal. There would be no investigation. The Velithians had spoken, and the galaxy had agreed. Sumi pressed her hands against the glass barrier separating her from the chamber below. She had failed. Humanity had failed. Again, and then something strange happened. Every datapad in the chamber made a sound at the same time. Every translation device chirped. Every screen flickered. The Council members looked at their devices with confusion. Some of them had never received an unauthorized message in their entire lives. The security systems were supposed to be perfect. Deho looked at his own device. A single line of text glowed on the screen. "You have made a terrible mistake." The message was signed with a symbol he recognized. It was the mark of the Lazarus Protocol, a classified human program that officially did not exist. Daeho had heard rumors about it during his military days. Some said it was a weapon. Others said it was a network. Most said it was just a myth, a story humans told themselves to feel less powerless. Looking at the panic spreading across the council chamber, Daeho realized it was very real. The Velithian High Speaker demanded answers. Her crystal body turned red with anger, a color shift that meant she was afraid. The chamber's eye, which had served the council faithfully for 6,000 years, did not respond. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the emergency systems activated, casting everything in pale yellow. "What is happening?" The Marvathi delegate shouted. "Who sent this message?" Nobody answered. The doors to the chamber sealed themselves. The communication systems went dark. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Daeho felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. It was small and fragile, but it was there. Somewhere out in the void, Michael Turner was still alive. And somewhere out there, humanity had been planning for this moment. The Council had made their decision. They had chosen to ignore 40 years of human suffering. They had chosen to execute a man without a fair trial. They had chosen to believe that humans were too weak, too young, too powerless to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sumi's datapad received a second message. This one was not from the Lazarus Protocol. It was from Commander Park Jiwoo, a name that made Sumi's heart race. Jiwoo was the head of Earth's Covert Intelligence Division, a woman who officially spent her days reviewing cargo, manifests, and trade agreements. The message was short. "Stay calm. Watch. We've got this." Sumi took a deep breath and straightened her uniform. The game had changed. For 40 years, humanity had played by the Council's rules. They had begged for fairness. They had asked for justice. They had followed every protocol and respected every tradition. That time was over. Now, humanity would play by its own rules, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then the screaming began. Council members shouted at their aides. Aides shouted at security officers. Security officers shouted into communication devices that no longer worked. The Great Chamber, which had seen 3,000 years of calm deliberation, had become a cage of frightened animals. Yoon Daeho stayed in his corner and watched. He had learned long ago that the best way to survive was to observe and wait. The Velethians were the most afraid, their crystal bodies shifting through colors so fast they looked like broken rainbows. The Marvathi delegate had pulled out a personal weapon, pointing it at shadows. The Elendri were trying to break through the sealed doors with their 4 powerful arms. None of it worked. The chamber remained locked. Then every screen in the room came alive at once, and a human face appeared. Commander Park Jiwoo looked calm, almost bored. She sat in a simple chair, wearing a plain gray uniform. Behind her, Daeho could see rows of computer terminals and human operators working quietly. This was not a warship. This was not a military base. This was an intelligence center, hidden somewhere in the depths of human space. "Good evening," Jiwoo said. Her voice was soft but carried perfectly through every speaker in the chamber. "I apologize for the interruption. I know you are all very busy sentencing innocent men to death." The Velithian High Speaker stepped forward. Her body had turned solid black, a color of pure rage. "This is an act of war. You will release this chamber immediately, or we will destroy every human colony in the sector." Jiwoo smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You could try, but before you make any decisions, I think you should hear what I have to say." She pressed a button, and the holographic display changed. Turner's face disappeared. In its place came images that made several council members look away in horror. Bodies. Human bodies. hundreds of them, floating in tanks filled with green liquid. Some were whole. Some were cut open. Some were missing limbs or organs. They were connected to machines by tubes and wires, kept alive but not living. "This is Research Station Theta 7, Jiwoo said. "It is located in the Velithian home sector, hidden inside an asteroid field. For the past 20 years, Velithian scientists have been collecting humans from frontier colonies. Farmers, miners, children. They take them in the night, and they never return." The chamber went quiet. Even the Velithians stopped moving. "The ship that Michael Turner destroyed was not a diplomatic vessel," Jiwoo continued. "It was a collection ship. It was returning from human space with 47 crew members and 12 human prisoners. Turner received a distress signal from those prisoners. He responded the only way he could. More images appeared. Communication logs, transport schedules, genetic research reports. The evidence was overwhelming, documented in the Velithians' own language, stamped with their own official seals. The Morvathi delegate lowered her weapon. "Is this true?" she asked, looking at the Velithian High Speaker. "Did you know about this?" The High Speaker did not answer. Her silence was answer enough. Jiwoo leaned forward in her chair. "We requested a formal investigation 3 times. 3 times, the Council rejected our petition. We were told that humans were being paranoid. We were told that we did not understand galactic politics. We were told to be patient." She stood up and walked closer to the camera. Her eyes were hard as stone. "So we investigated ourselves. We spent 15 years gathering evidence. We found the research stations. We found the collection ships. We found the survivors." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word. "We found 112 humans still alive in those tanks. 112 people who had been cut open and put back together dozens of times. They were being used to study human biology, to understand what makes us different." Daeho felt sick. He had heard rumors about missing colonists for years, but he had never imagined anything like this. He looked at the other council members and saw shock on most of their faces. The Kasori delegate was weeping through her multiple eyes. The Alindri had stopped trying to break down the doors and were staring at the screens in silence. "What did you want from us?" The Morvathi delegate asked the Velithians. "What were you trying to learn?" Jiwoo answered for them. They wanted to understand human adrenaline, our fight-or-flight response, our ability to become stronger, faster, and more dangerous when we are afraid. She pulled up another document. They were trying to synthesize it, to create drugs that would give Velithian soldiers the same abilities. The truth hung in the air like poison. "You were not studying us," Daeho said. His voice surprised him. The protocol dampeners had been disabled along with everything else. "You were trying to turn us into weapons." The Velithian High Speaker finally spoke. "This is propaganda. Human lies designed to. I have 40 terabytes of your own research files," Jiwoo interrupted. "I have video recordings from your stations. I have testimony from your own scientists who were disgusted by what they were ordered to do. You can call it lies if you want, but the galaxy will see the truth." As if on cue, the screen showed a map of the galaxy. Thousands of small dots lit up across it, each one representing a broadcast station. Jiwoo's evidence was being sent to every inhabited world, every news network, every independent journalist in council space. The High Speaker's body flickered through every color at once. "You cannot do this. You do not have the right." "We have every right," Jiwoo said. "You kidnapped our people. You tortured them. You experimented on them like animals. And when one of our own tried to stop you, you sentenced him to death." She sat back down in her chair. "Michael Turner is a hero, and in 72 hours, the galaxy will know it. The screens went dark, returning control to the Council's own systems. The doors unsealed. The communication channels reopened. But nobody moved. Kang Sumi walked down from the observation level and stood in the center of the chamber. She looked at each council member in turn. Some of them could not meet her eyes. "We did not want war," she said quietly. "We wanted justice. We wanted to be heard. You could have given us that 40 years ago. You could have given us that 3 times when we asked for investigations. But you chose to ignore us. You chose to believe that humans were too small to matter." She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she paused and looked back at the Volithian high speaker. "Michael Turner will not die, and neither will our hope. The question now is whether you will help us build something better, or whether you will keep making the same mistakes." She left the chamber in silence. Behind her, the galaxy's rulers sat in their tall seats, surrounded by evidence of their crimes, wondering how everything had changed so quickly. And somewhere in deep space, the Lazarus Protocol continued its work. The doors of the council chamber opened, and Michael Turner walked in. He was not wearing prisoner chains. He was not surrounded by guards pointing weapons at his head. Instead, he walked between Lieutenant Han Murray and Sergeant Baek Jun-soo, both wearing full combat armor with Earth military symbols on their shoulders. They did not push him forward or hold his arms. They walked beside him like an honor guard. Turner looked older than his official pictures. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and deep lines marked his face. His eyes were tired, the eyes of a man who had seen too much and carried too many burdens. But he walked with his back straight and his head high. He was not ashamed of what he had done. The council members watched him in silence. Some looked at him with hatred. Others looked at him with something close to respect. The Volithian high speaker had not moved from her platform since Commander Ji-woo's broadcast. Her crystal body remained black, frozen in anger. Turner stopped in the center of the chamber, exactly where the death warrant had floated just hours before. He looked around at the 12 platforms, at the species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, at the beings who had treated humanity like children for 4 decades. "My name is Michael Turner," he said. His voice was rough from years of shouting orders over engine noise. 3 weeks ago, I destroyed a Volithian ship. I killed 47 of their people. Those are facts, and I will not deny them." The chamber remained silent. But those 47 people were not diplomats, Turner continued. They were kidnappers. They were torturers. They were soldiers in a secret war against my species. And when I heard the screams of 12 humans trapped in their cargo hold, I did what any person with a heart would do. I stopped them. The Morvathi delegate leaned forward. "Why did you not report this to the authorities? Why did you not follow proper channels?" Turner laughed. It was a bitter sound, without any humor. "Proper channels? I've been filing reports about missing colonists for 15 years. I have sent evidence to this council 6 times. Do you know what happened? Nothing. Your bureaucrats filed my reports in folders that nobody ever read. Your investigators said there was not enough evidence. Your diplomats told me to be patient." He pointed at the Volithian high speaker. And all that time, she knew. She knew what her people were doing. She knew where the missing humans were going. She sat in this chamber and voted on laws about peace and justice, while her scientists cut open human children to study their organs. The high speaker's body flickered. "You have no proof that I have all the proof I need," Turner interrupted. "Commander Ji-woo sent me the files. Communications between your research stations and your government. Budget reports showing how much money you spent on human specimens. Meeting notes where you discussed how to avoid detection." He shook his head. "You knew everything. You approved everything. And you did nothing to stop it. Lieutenant Han Mireille stepped forward and activated a holographic display on her wrist. A map of council space appeared in the air, showing the positions of ships. Human ships, hundreds of them, positioned in careful formations around 12 different star systems. "These are our terms," Turner said. "First, humanity will be given full species recognition with voting rights in this council. No more probationary status. No more waiting. We have earned our place." The Kasori delegate raised a tentacle. "That would require a vote. The process takes as long as you want it to take," Turner said. "You have bent your own rules 1,000 times when it suited you. You will bend them again." He raised a second finger. "Second, an independent tribunal will be created to investigate the Volithian kidnappings. Not a council tribunal controlled by the same people who ignored our complaints. An independent body with representatives from every species, including humans." The Alindri delegate nodded slowly. "That is reasonable." "Third, all human captives still held in Volithian research facilities will be released immediately. Commander Ji Woo has already located 3 more stations beyond the one she showed you. We believe there are at least 50 more humans still alive. They will be returned to us." Turner's voice hardened as he raised his 4th finger. "And finally, this council will issue a public acknowledgement of its failures. You will admit that you ignored human suffering for 40 years. You will admit that you allowed war crimes to happen under your watch. And you will promise to do better." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several delegates shouted that Turner had no authority to make demands. The Volithian High Speaker screamed that this was blackmail, that humanity would pay for its arrogance. One of the smaller species representatives tried to call for security, forgetting that the security systems were still under human control. Turner waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again, more quietly this time. "I want you to understand something. Those ships on the map have not fired a single weapon. Not one. We have the power to destroy your homeworlds. We have the positioning, the technology, and the numbers. But we have not attacked." He looked at each platform in turn. "We do not want war. We have never wanted war. We wanted to be part of your civilization. We wanted to learn from you, to trade with you, to explore the stars together. That is still what we want." Admiral Shin Yunji's face appeared on one of the screens. She was an older woman with silver hair and calm eyes, standing on the bridge of a massive warship. Behind her, crew members worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "My fleet holds position," she said. "We will remain here until you give us an answer. If you accept our terms, we will withdraw peacefully and begin the process of building a better future together. If you refuse, or if you try to harm any human in council space, we will defend ourselves." She leaned closer to the camera. "And I promise you, we are very good at defending ourselves." The screen went dark. Turner looked at the Volithian High Speaker one last time. "You have 72 hours. Use them wisely." He turned and walked out of the chamber, his honor guard beside him. The doors closed behind them, leaving the council alone with their fear and their choices. Yoon Dae-ho remained in his corner, watching the chaos unfold around him. For the first time in 40 years, humans were not begging for scraps from the galactic table. They were demanding a seat, and the galaxy had no choice but to listen. The council broke apart like glass hitting stone. Within 6 hours of Turner's ultimatum, the 12 species had split into factions. The Morvathi were the first to announce their support for humanity's terms. Their delegate, a tall being covered in soft brown fur, stood before the chamber and declared that justice mattered more than tradition. The Alindri followed within the hour, their 4 armed representatives stating that they had suspected Volithian crimes for centuries but had been too afraid to speak. The Kasori delegate wept as she cast her vote in favor of humanity. Her species were empaths, able to feel the emotions of others. She said she had felt human pain for 40 years and could not bear it anymore. 3 species stood with humanity. 3 more remained neutral, watching and waiting to see which side would win. And 6, led by the Velithians, demanded war. The Velithian High Speaker called for an emergency military response. Her crystal body had turned deep red, the color of blood and anger. She screamed that humanity was a disease that needed to be burned out of the galaxy. She demanded that every council fleet attack the human ships immediately, but the other species hesitated. "Your research stations killed humans for experiments," the Morvathi delegate said. "Why should we die to protect your crimes? Because if we do not stand together, the humans will destroy us one by one," the High Speaker replied. "They are predators. They will never be satisfied. Give them what they want today, and tomorrow they will want more." The neutral species looked at each other with uncertainty. This was the argument that had kept humanity in chains for 40 years. Humans were young. Humans were aggressive. Humans could not be trusted. It was easier to believe these things than to admit that the Council had made terrible mistakes. But then something unexpected happened. Yoon Daeho stepped forward and asked to speak. He was still just an observer, still technically without voice or vote. But the protocol dampeners were gone, and after everything that had happened, nobody tried to stop him. "I have served this council for 23 years, he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "I have watched every session. I have studied every vote. I have learned your languages, your customs, your histories. And in all that time, I have seen things that I was ordered to keep secret." He pulled out a small data device. This contains records of council corruption going back 200 years. Not just Velithian crimes. Crimes by the Morvathi, the Alindri, the Kasori, and 3 other species. Secret trade agreements that exploited younger civilizations. Military actions disguised as peacekeeping missions. Resources stolen from worlds that had no voice to complain. The chamber fell silent. "I am not showing you this to threaten you," Daeho continued. "I am showing you this because the system is broken. It has been broken for a long time. Humanity is not your enemy. We are your mirror. We show you what you have become." He placed the device on the central dais. "Every species in this room has done terrible things. Every species has made choices they regret. The question is not whether we deserve punishment. The question is whether we can build something better together." While Daeho spoke, other humans were working across council space. Intelligence Officer Choi Yuna had spent 10 years building relationships with moderate factions in every species. She had shared meals with Morvathi farmers. She had attended Alindri religious ceremonies. She had learned the Kasori art of emotional sharing. Now she called in every favor she had ever earned. Across the galaxy, alien politicians received messages from human friends asking them to choose peace. Alien journalists received evidence of Velithian crimes and began asking hard questions. Alien citizens watched Commander Ji Woo's broadcast and wondered if they had been lied to their entire lives. The Velithians found themselves increasingly alone. And then Dr. Kwan Ham made her broadcast. She was a xenobiologist who had spent the last 5 years working in the hidden sanctuaries, caring for the human survivors rescued from Velithian research stations. She appeared on screens across the galaxy, standing in a medical facility surrounded by patients in recovery beds. "My name is Kwan Hana," she said. "I am a doctor. I heal people. That is my purpose. And for 5 years, I have been trying to heal what the Velithians broke." She walked between the beds, showing faces of survivors. Some were scarred. Some were missing limbs. Some stared at nothing, their minds shattered by years of torture. "The Velithians told you they were studying us for scientific purposes. That was a lie. They were studying our adrenaline response because they wanted to create super soldiers. They wanted to take what makes humans strong and put it in their own bodies. She stopped beside a young woman who could not have been older than 20. The woman's arms were covered in surgical scars, thin lines where doctors had opened her again and again. "This is Lee Soyan," Hannah said. She was taken from her colony when she was 12 years old. For 8 years, she was cut open, tested, and put back together. They wanted to understand why humans fight harder when they are afraid. They wanted to bottle our survival instinct. Hannah's voice shook with anger. They did not see us as people. They saw us as resources, as raw materials for their weapons programs. And when the council ignored our complaints, they took that as permission to continue. She looked directly into the camera. "I am not asking for revenge. I am asking for justice. I am asking you to look at these survivors and tell me that their suffering does not matter. I am asking you to choose what kind of galaxy you want to live in." The broadcast ended. Across council space, millions of beings sat in silence, confronted with evidence they could not ignore. The Velithians' allies began to reconsider their positions. The neutral species shifted toward humanity. Even some Velithians, horrified by what their government had done, began to speak out against their own leaders. The fracture deepened. The old order cracked. Kang Sumi watched the reports coming in from every corner of the galaxy. Support for humanity was growing by the hour. The Velithians were losing allies faster than they could threaten them. The council was breaking apart, and from the ruins, something new was beginning to emerge. She thought about Michael Turner, waiting somewhere in human space for the council's answer. She thought about Commander Ji Woo, whose careful planning had brought them to this moment. She thought about all the humans who had suffered and died, never knowing that their pain would one day change the galaxy. 40-8 hours remained on Turner's ultimatum. Sumi was beginning to believe they might not need them. 71 hours and 43 minutes after Michael Turner delivered his ultimatum, the Galactic Council voted. The chamber looked different now. The tall platforms that had separated the species for thousands of years seemed smaller somehow, less important. The Velithian High Speaker was not in her seat. She had been removed by her own people 6 hours earlier. Arrested by security forces who had decided their species' future mattered more than protecting criminals. The new Velithian representative was younger, her crystal body pale blue with shame and hope. She stood before the council and did something no Velithian had ever done in 3,000 years. She apologized. "My species has committed terrible crimes," she said. "We took beings from their homes. We tortured them. We treated them as objects to be studied rather than people to be respected. There is no excuse for what we did. There can be no forgiveness that erases this suffering." She turned to face Kang Sumi, who had been given a temporary seat on the chamber floor. "But we can choose a different path. We can choose to be better. And we can begin by giving humanity what it has always deserved: recognition, respect, and a voice in this council." The vote began. One by one, lights turned green across the platforms. The Morvathi, the Alindri, the Kasori, even the species who had stood with the Velithians changed their votes, unwilling to be remembered as defenders of monsters. When the final count came, 9 of 12 species had voted yes. The remaining 3 abstained, unable to support humanity but unwilling to stand against it. Michael Turner's death warrant was officially rescinded. In its place, the council issued a document that had never existed before in galactic history, a formal apology to humanity, signed by 9 species, acknowledging 40 years of neglect and abuse. Admiral Shin Yunji watched the vote from her warship bridge. When the result was announced, she allowed herself a small smile. Then she turned to her communications officer. "Send the withdrawal order," she said. All ships return to human space. Maintain defensive positions but stand down from combat readiness. The officer hesitated. Admiral, are you sure? What if they change their minds? Yunji shook her head. They won't. They're too afraid of what comes next. And honestly, so am I. She looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that was suddenly much bigger than it had been 72 hours ago. We just changed everything. Now we have to figure out how to live with it. The human fleet began its withdrawal. Hundreds of ships turned away from their positions around Council homeworlds and set course for Earth space. They left peacefully, just as they had arrived. Not a single shot had been fired. 6 months later, Kang Sumi walked into the council chamber as humanity's first voting representative. The room had been redesigned. The tall platforms were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where every species sat at the same level. The protocol dampeners had been permanently disabled. And in the center of the circle, where death warrants and trade agreements had once floated, a new symbol hung in the air, 13 stars orbiting a shared sun. Representing the new Council of Equals, Sumi took her seat between the Morvathi and Kasori delegates. They nodded at her with something that looked like genuine welcome. It was strange, after 40 years of being ignored, to finally be seen. The session began with routine business. Trade negotiations, border disputes, resource allocation. Normal problems that required normal solutions. But every few minutes, Sumi caught herself looking around the circle, marveling at the fact that she was there at all. Michael Turner did not attend the ceremony. He had refused all honors, all titles, all offers of political positions. Instead, he retired to a small colony world on the edge of human space, far from cameras and reporters and people who wanted to shake his hand. A young journalist named Oh Tae-yun eventually tracked him down, hoping to record the hero's story for future generations. He found Turner sitting on the porch of a simple house, watching the sunset over alien mountains. "Why did you do it?" Tae-hyun asked. "Why did you risk everything? You could have been executed. You could have started a war that killed billions." Turner thought about the question for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "They forgot something important about humans," he said. "We don't just survive. We remember. And we plan. They ignored us for 40 years. They thought we would stay quiet forever. But we were watching. We were learning. We were preparing." He looked at the young journalist with tired eyes. "I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to save those 12 people on that ship. Everything else came from that one choice." Tae-yun recorded the interview and returned to Earth. The story he wrote won awards and was translated into 100 languages. But Turner never read it. He preferred to spend his days gardening and watching the sky. Commander Park Ji-woo officially decommissioned the Lazarus Protocol. The Dead Man's Switch was dismantled. The network of hidden ships and agents was dissolved. Humanity no longer needed a secret weapon. They had earned their place through truth, not threats. But Ji-woo was a careful woman. Before she destroyed the last files, she made copies. She hid them in places that no one would ever find. And she began building something new, something smaller and quieter, just in case the galaxy forgot its lessons. She hoped it would never be needed. But she knew better than to trust hope alone. Admiral Shin Yoonji led her fleet back to Earthspace. As they crossed the border, she sent one final message to the Council's new Joint Security Command. It was short and simple. "We look forward to being your partners. Just remember, we were never your prey." Years passed. New species joined the Council, and each one was told the story of Michael Turner. Not as a warning about human aggression, but as a lesson in what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had not burned their enemies or demanded tribute. They had simply refused to be ignored. And the galaxy learned to listen. On the anniversary of the vote, council members gathered to commemorate the day everything changed. The Velithian representative, now old and respected, spoke about the importance of remembering past mistakes. The Marvathi delegate talked about the friendships that had grown from shared struggle. And Kang Sumi, gray-haired and wise, stood before them all and said something that would be remembered for centuries. "We are all capable of greatness," she said. "And we are all capable of terrible things. The difference is the choices we make when no one is watching. For 40 years, you chose to look away from our suffering. We could have chosen revenge. Instead, we chose to show you a better path." She smiled at the circle of faces around her. Some she had known for decades. Others were new, young representatives who had never known a galaxy without human voices. "That is what it means to be human," she said. "We break. We bleed. We fall down. But we always get back up. And we always remember." The chamber erupted in applause. For the first time in galactic history, 12 species and one young newcomer celebrated not their differences, but their shared future. Somewhere on a distant colony world, Michael Turner looked up at the stars. He did not know about the ceremony. He did not care about the speeches. He only knew that the people he had saved were safe, that his species had found its place, and that the galaxy was a little better than it had been before. That was enough. That was more than enough. He went inside to make dinner, leaving the stars to shine without him.